John McClane is simply an ordinary guy who was thrown into extraordinary circumstances. He's not some super cop, some indestructible, unfeeling, unemotional guy. He's a guy who cares for his wife. He cares about his own life. He cares about staying alive. This could have very easily become a very heavy, kill everybody, blood and guts, bullets flying everywhere film. But when your life is on the line, you could die at any moment, a very strange sense of humor comes out. And from the research that I did, and you know, talking to the various officers and detectives who helped us on this, they helped me a lot, to find that kind of black humor.
She's the leader, sort of the group of hostages through most of the movie. So I think when you have 50 people looking to you, and you're who they're looking to, it kind of, in itself, might force you to become a little stronger and a little less just a bundle of raw nerve tissue.
As far as I'm concerned, I'm not playing the villain. I'm just playing somebody who wants certain things in life, has made certain choices, and goes after them.
I like the idea of playing bad guy. It's an action movie, which I haven't done before. And it's very interesting and it's very different, and you learn a lot.
He's lost faith in the system, and the system has made him lose faith in himself, I guess you would say. And McClane helps him get that faith back so he can become the man that he wants to be.
It was a physically exhausting film. I did most of my own stunts in this. I really trained hard for this film and got in good shape. I really wanted to do a lot of my own stunts because I think that always lends a lot of production value to the picture, and it was a lot of fun.
He's doing it, but he's not really doing it, which gets you more pissed off.
Boom, boom, boom. I can tell you what the challenge is for me on the film. It's shooting in this building. I've made some calls to some effects people that I've worked with in the years, just to find out, hey guys, have you ever blown up a floor on a real building? Well, yeah, we've done that before. A 35-story high-rise, like the Fox Plaza, and all I get is this wide-eyed look from them, like, we haven't done that.
We have to periodically run downstairs and apologize to the lawyer beneath us, saying we're about to fire machine guns. Will you excuse us?
And everything is blowing up underneath, all right? The last detonation will be as if the gas tank has exploded in this, which is totally disabling the vehicle, washing gas out into the street.
The first film was really kind of contained in this one building, and there was a certain sense of claustrophobia in that. This film is up in the air, in the airport, outside the airport, out on the runway. It's just expanded a lot more. The snow actually turned out to be one of the characters in the film. We had to move 3 or 4 times we had to kind of chase the snow. That was really, the challenge for us, was to see whether or not we could match or top what we did in this huge action film called, Die Hard. And I think we've surpassed that.
It really just goes to your stomach and pulls you into it.
You're not quite sure who's wearing the black hat or the white hat.
It's just like cowboys and Indians, modern-day cowboys and Indians.
I thought the first Die Hard was one of the hardest things I'd ever tried to do, but then I realized when I got into this one that the first one was a piece of cake.
I am once again in a place that happens to be taken over by terrorists.
He wants to take charge of the situation. He wants to handle things his own way.
He's got this great twinkle in his eye.
He's not bound by any of the red tape or the badges or the clearances.
Same old cranky guy. Well, one of the things that we tried to do in both these films is present a character that is not invincible, that is vulnerable, both physically and emotionally.
Bruce Willis wants to do his stunts himself, and sometimes Charlie and I have to calm him down and tell him not to do them because we want to keep him alive and well so that we can shoot also the following day.
We have a scene where we actually fly a real helicopter over the wing of a real 747, and I jumped out of it onto the wing, and we proceed to have a huge fight with 2 different guys on the wing of a moving 747. I don't think that's ever been done. There's only one way to really make it look like you're trying to kill someone, and that is to try and kill them.
There was this book that they had purchased called Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorp, and that the studio thought there could be a good movie there.
Quite frankly, I had no idea what to do with it, but I knew that I needed to make a living, and there was no bearer bonds, there was no explosion at the top of the building. There was a lot that was not there.
The book was a sequel to a book called The Detective that had been made into a movie with Frank Sinatra.
And so they actually had to go back to Frank Sinatra to say, we're going to make a sequel to that book. Would you like to be in it? And fortunately, he basically said, I'm too old and too rich and I'll pass, which is good because the chases would have been on Rascals in the building had he taken it.
I was trying to figure it out, so I was working late hours, had a young family. I came home one night and got into a fight with my wife. Like a lot of husbands who get in fights with their wives are right. But I was too stubborn to apologize at the moment, so after I had dinner with the family and kissed my children, put them in bed, I went back down to the studio, and I should have said sorry as I walked out the door, and I didn't, and I got on the 134 going down to Burbank from Pasadena, and I got behind a truck that was carrying refrigerators and washers and dryers, and one of the refrigerator boxes flew out the back. I couldn't get out of the lane. I'm going 65 miles an hour. I went right through it. And fortunately, it was the end of the day, and it was empty. And my heart's just going, a million times a minute, thinking I could have been dead. I was dead. And I suddenly realized what Nothing Lasts Forever was. It was about not a 65-year-old man. It's about a 35-year-old man who should have said he's sorry to his wife, and then terrorists take over the building.
I'd done a movie with Joel Silver. It was called Predator. He sent me this script. I sent it back. I said, thanks, no. Because it was a terrorist story. It was terrorists take over a building and, we're going to wipe out terrorism. And there's no fun in terrorism. There's no joy in it. And I said, could we make this a robbery? Everybody likes robbers. You can have fun. A robber, even a bad robber, is fun, is interesting. I have to, from hindsight, even though Joel and I have not spent years being good buddies, I have to, from hindsight, give him credit for that. He had the nerve to do it.
I mean, the book was called, again, Nothing Lasts Forever. And I said, we cannot call this movie that name. It cannot call that. And Shane Black, who was a friend of mine who had been working on a project that eventually became Last Boy Scout, and he had given me some pages under a title called Die Hard.
And I thought, it sounds a whole lot better than Nothing Lasts Forever.
And I remember there was a lot of opposition to that, too. I got a letter from Roderick Thorp saying, how could you name my movie after a battery? This is ridiculous. I mean, people will only think if it's about a battery.
Joel said the best thing that ever happened to your book is making this movie Die Hard, and so that was the end of that conversation.
Well, they had a script that had already been written that stuck fairly close to the novel with some really clever reinventions that Jeb Stuart had done. Joel brought me in and said, I need this picture rewritten like ahead of the cameras, and I know you can do that.
For all of us as a group to say, we don't know exactly how this is going to work out, or what the specifics along the way, but we've got the tune. We can hum the melody, if you will. We don't know what the words are yet, but we can hum it. We know what the song is.
There was a building which was being built by Fox. It was, Fox Plaza right in Century City, which was literally going up. So we decided to shoot some of those scenes in what we called Nakatomi Plaza.
They had this building, right on the lot, and it was a gorgeous building, and it had everything that we needed.
They're very protective. We had to guarantee them not a scratch.
At that time, there was a big, actually, show business legal firm moved into that building, which had a lot of clients at Fox, too, but none of them were on our movie.
I remember a friend of mine was working there. I guess the people weren't too happy that were in the building that they were shooting this movie.
It was trouble. It was difficult. And there were people at the lot. I mean, Barry Diller himself was not happy about a movie in that building. It was weird because we were being pulled in and out, and we were just trying to do the best we could with, which, by the way, not a lot of money from today's standpoint to make that picture.
It seemed to me that the scale of the movie goes up if it's an iconic structure. The Die Hard building, I wanted to use it because loads of people had looked at it and could see it, and thereafter could look and say, that was where that happened.
I was a very big fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, and we knew that the Japanese culture was a big fan of Frank Lloyd Wright. When you look at the office of Nakatomi, it has a sense of falling water, which is a very famous Frank Lloyd Wright house.
In the atrium, we reproduced Falling Water. Frank Lloyd Wright was nuts about Japan, and Japanese architecture was a huge influence for him as well.
Yes, it was something that I was intrigued with, but it worked for our story that a Japanese culture tries to Americanize itself for its American audience.
I'd never spend any time in a high-rise building. And I made friends with the construction superintendent, and he said, so you're not familiar with high-speed elevators? And I said, I know nothing. And he said, well, let's take a ride. And we got on top of one of them. I'm thinking, having never been on top of an elevator, I didn't know if it actually went all the way to the top, but he wasn't ducking, and I wasn't about to duck. He kind of did one of these head fakes, and I just flattened out. I was not going to, and of course, you stop with plenty of room. So if I started thinking, if I can put some of this same fear in, and the question then is, how do you bring that visually to a story?
Good.
I wanted the audience to sort of learn like I learned. You had to figure that out. What floors are open? How does the parking area work? How do the gates come down? What about the guy sitting in the front as the guard? How do you get to the roof? How do you get off the roof? All those things are visual storytelling. And but the building really was a character in that movie.
I really believe in sequels, and I've made a couple of other sequels. You have to be able to honor the things that were essential to that movie and the characters, and then take it hopefully to another level.
I didn't jump into the idea of a sequel right away because, when we were doing this, people frowned on sequels. This is not an era of franchises. There was Francis the Talking Mule was a franchise movie. It wasn't like, what we know today.
I get a call from my agent saying, do you want to talk about writing Die Hard 2? I was like, that's kind of a no-brainer. What we're going to do is we're going to adapt this book, 58 Minutes, as a movie on its own. The original story was about a terrorist takeover of JFK.
It was a hard movie to sequelize, I said at that time. I said, look, here's a movie that was a one-off occurrence in this guy's life. How do you continue that?
Die Hard 2 was truly about how can the same stuff happen to the same guy twice. And a little bit of tongue-in-cheek because, the second time was actually felt like the biggest stretch because, oh my God, he steps in it again.
I wanted to escalate it and make it bigger because I do think that the audience wants more. We tried to walk the fine line of amping up the action, making it a bigger movie without going over the top. It was very seriously our effort not to go over the top, so it's turning into another superhero movie. I felt like taking it from being a contained story in one building, it was important that it was a place. It wasn't like, oh, John McClane goes to Paris and then to Thailand, but it is a place that you can name. Okay, it takes place at an airport.
The whole thing took place at Christmas time, again, in the snow in Washington, D.C., but we said, should we really make this movie about this incredible snowstorm and it's all about snow and snow and snow?
And I said, it's gotta be in the snow. It has to be a different environment from the first movie. And I come from Finland. I know snow. It's no problem. It's gonna be okay.
Joel came to me and he says, well, I need a version with fog. I said, are you serious? He says, yeah, I know it won't work, but they're making me do it. And so I spent 2 days rewriting the entire movie that it was the worst. Is it fog storm? Is that the term? Fog bank. It's a complete fool's errand. There's just no way you believe these things work. The fog is this thick that the people are walking, and then the studio read it and they get, you're right, fog doesn't work. Thank you, my fingers are numb.
Cameras, don't roll until I tell you, okay? We gotta wait for the snow to get here.
Little did we know that it turned out to be the mildest and least snowy winter in, I think, 60 years.
Proving that global warming started a lot earlier, and we just chased snow everywhere. We just could not find it cold enough. We kept going further and further north.
The scenes had to be snowy. It had to be this like, When they ran out of the plastic snowflakes, they went to soap flakes. All you had to do is get the tiniest fragment of soap in your eye. You come out like serious villain and you go, ow, ow, shit, oh shit. Cut. Ah. It was like burn like a mother.
And I remember the night. It's freezing cold. It's so cold. It's like you can barely shoot. It's so cold. And I remember huddling next to Joel Silver, the producer, and Joel looks at me and he says, I think this time I took a little bit too much on my plate. And I was like, this is Joel Silver. Up till now, he's always said everything is perfect, even if we have nothing and we can't shoot. And now he's giving up? What am I gonna do if he gives up? That was the toughest night on the whole movie.
Let's just go right away, real fast, one more time.
Somehow we got through it, and piece by piece we got it shot.
Action!
And somehow we got through it, and in the end result, I don't think the audience can really tell that we never had any snow anywhere.
The second one, we really got the best kudos you could get on a sequel, which is that it was not the same picture recycled all over again. Yes, he was once again caught between the villains and the authorities. He was isolated and alone for much of the movie. So the things that make a Die Hard movie, I think are really, really crystallized in these first two films.
I decided to take some time off from contract jobs at studios and just sit down and write a spec. It was called Simon Says. It was about a cop going about his normal everyday life who was contacted out of the blue by a psychopath who tells the cop that he's going to start killing people unless the cop does exactly what the psychopath demands.
I read his script and realized that you could make a Die Hard out of that.
Everybody sat around. This would be a great idea. We just switched the name. We were going to call it Die Hard 3, and then McTiernan said Die Hard with a Vengeance. You know, we thought of something tough.
Die Hard has in the past always been in a box. The box was the building. In the first one, the box was an airport. In the second one, the box was New York City. In the third one.
It seemed to me that it's simply a matter of scale. You can make the unescapable thing as big as a planet or as small as a table. So we'll make it a city. Same thing as a building.
2 FBI agents called me and they said, we just read your script with great interest. And how do you know the specific details that you talk about in your script about the Federal Reserve Bank, about the layout of it, about the nature of the vault, how many security personnel are down there, how much gold bullion's down there? And I said, well, because we were down there and we were taking a tour of the place and they showed it to us. And the FBI agent said, they showed you the vault. And I said, yeah, they took us downstairs into the vault. Jackson DeGovia, the production designer, took a bunch of photographs of it, and I studied it, and then I wrote the specifics of the vault and proximity of it into the script. Suffice it to say, they weren't really pleased about that, and I think they sort of shored up their security measures.
The whole idea of robbing the Federal Reserve in New York City, that was bold. You know, it was big and it was tough. And they pulled that off, I think, really well.
I think the third one of the series is always the most difficult to make. The first one is a success, then the second one automatically wins a little bit because of the success of the first one. It was very interesting for the movie for these 2 people to try and work together and figure out how to get to the bad guys. Because all these movies are about how to get the bad guys.
Well, I think originally the notion was that it was going to be Richard Gere, which is a whole different idea.
I pushed him hard to do this picture, and he just didn't want to do it. He just didn't want to do it. And then all of a sudden, we were told that Sybil Shepherd got pregnant, and they would have to shut down Moonlighting. If we could convince Bruce to do it, then maybe he might do the movie. Now, that was a controversial decision.
He's doing it, but he's not really doing it, which gets you more pissed off.
His personality worked very well on television. But he had been through a chain of movies because he was suddenly a big star. He'd been through 2 movies in a row that had failed. They didn't want to let anybody know that this was a Bruce Willis movie.
Action!
People thought, how can Bruce, but I thought he could do it. I thought that just watching him on Moonlighting, he had that kind of swagger that I thought Mel Gibson had, that I thought Cagney had, that I thought these guys had, where they can, they can tell a joke and then pull a gun and kill you.
And so we had to build something that had to do with Bruce, to build a story for him and to figure out what his essence was.
He was perfect for the first Die Hard because he was just, he's just an ordinary cop who has an ordinary job, who has ordinary problems with his family.
We can relate. All the guys with receding hairlines and who are divorcing their wives can relate to him.
With Bruce, you suddenly had someone who looked like a normal guy, who, for a change, looked like he was overmatched. You want your hero to be an underdog, but when Arnold Schwarzenegger's the hero, it's hard for Arnold to look like an underdog. In the movie, when Bruce looks out of the washroom and he sees a dozen heavily armed men come in with assault weapons and RPGs, he shuts the door and runs upstairs. Bruce is more realistic. He goes, there's 12 guys, I'm going to call the police. So that was just radical at that time.
John McClane was just a cop, and he reacted just as you imagined most of us would. The moment gunfire lit off, he'd been out the front door, or it'd have been sucking whoever was blocking the front door to let me out. I don't have the stuff of heroes, but when you watch Die Hard, you go like, man, I could conceivably have the stuff of heroes. This guy's so normal.
People understand, I think they relate to a guy that is bitching about the circumstance that he's in. That really is him. Deep down, under all that crassness and all that bitching and bullshitting and all that, he is the one that is the hero.
We are surrounded in this life by very clever people who are screwing us or trying to screw us, and it's wonderful to see somebody who wins out.
You were rooting for this underdog so hard, this unstoppable, unbeatable spirit. There are no odds that he won't defeat. It has to do with that spirit. It has to do with that courage. We just fall in love with that guy.
Bruce was the right man for the job. The ironic aside coming out of the lift of one side of the mouth and the one eyebrow up. perfect fit.
Nobody really was aware of this kind of style of picture making. A movie where you could make a joke and then at the same time have gunshots and explosions and people, maybe not surviving.
The humor was because I'd never written an action movie, and I kind of felt like every time I got to a place where I would like, oh, come on. He had to be feeling the same thing. I can't get any worse than this.
The type of things that John McClane says to Gruber in the first film are the kind of things that everybody wants to say to their boss.
You have to give an audience little moments to step back.
Too much blood and gore and seriousness sometimes can be boring or can be a little bit much. And so when you have humor infused within the framework, I think it's sort of like, yeah.
What I said was, can I just spend one Christmas Eve and not get shot at?
Bruce very much wanted to make sure that the character felt real and not false or cheesy. For me as a director, I felt that it was crucial for the audience to experience, again, that character with the sort of dry, sarcastic wit. That's why people love that character.
And I think every guy out there, responded very favorably to John McClane's style of sarcasm. It's a fine line. You can very easily go too far. The stuff has to crackle, and it has to come natural.
The idea is that he is not happy in his own skin. So all these things that he does are reactions to it. The essence of his stardom is that sense of humor comes from pain.
I came on board the movie, and they said, we want you to meet Bruce, and he's very excited. He's seen other movies you've done. So we started talking, and we realized we grew up like about 30 miles apart in New Jersey. And somehow we started talking about the kids' programs we watched, and suddenly it came up Roy Rogers. So that's how Yippee-Ki-Yay got into the movie, because that's what Roy Rogers said.
Somebody in the test screening put down on the card, where's the Yippee-Ki-Yay?
In fact, there was a discussion of that very signature line, the Yippee-Ki-Yay, mother.
We never shot Bruce saying that.
So Bruce came, it was like 3 in the morning, and they created a little fire in front of him. He's laying down.
We ended up shooting with a flame bar in the foreground and Bruce laying down in the asphalt.
And mind you, we're shooting, and this movie's supposed to be in like 3,000 theaters in about 6 days. It was very exciting. Probably one of the most exciting parts of the whole movie is getting that shot and getting that movie done.
I think the key for me is that you have to have a character that was grounded in a human element. He really came back to fix his marriage with his wife. You got that in the first few minutes that you see Bruce and Bonnie Bedelia.
Bonnie was Bruce's suggestion, brilliant suggestion. She's a wonderful, God, she's extraordinary.
It was crucial to have her there. I feel that for John McClane's character, family and his wife and his children are so crucial.
For most heroes, when they show up, James Bond does not have a family. Jason Bourne does not have a family. John McClane does. And like everybody else, he's thinking about his kids.
And he's great in that scene where he and Reggie VelJohnson are on the walkie-talkies together. That's what gave the movie its depth. And I remember Bruce fought for that scene in the movie because he thought it rounded out his character. And I think he's right.
You'd seen many action movies before. This is the first time our hero was self-conscious. This is the first time our hero was fallible, not the way of like in the third act he gets hit in the shoulder with a bullet and suddenly is just like, oh, you failed me for a second, and then wins anyway.
And
We really, really worked really hard to keep him looking vulnerable. And the ultimate compliment, somebody would say to Bruce, man, I really thought you were going to die in that movie.
Well, we've lost that cutting edge, I tell you.
He was just this blue-collar schmo, and we all got to say, yeah, and what would you do?
I would never speak for Bruce, but I would assume that you would feel extremely fortunate that you stumbled upon a character you were born to play.
What's special about Bruce, people might look different and talk different, but anybody in the world can relate to this kind of a character. It's a very universal character.
I'm fine. I can't remember when I've had a better day.
What we did was look at the man, put him in the circumstance. The diehards just happened to be out of Bruce's character.
I think it's Bruce's personality in that character which is very attractive to an audience.
One of the fun things about playing a villain is that there aren't really any rules.
The villain is more important than the hero, because if the villain is not smart and powerful, then the hero feels like a wet noodle.
You're setting the villain up as this master criminal, and then you're introducing the guy that can bring it all down.
It's always fun to have a slight twist, and I think many things in the Die Hard movies have a slight twist.
All Die Hard films always try to have this gotcha thing that happens toward the end where it's the villain's agenda is really different than you think.
You want to know who they are and you want to know what happens to them. And they're not supposed to win. There's a definite structure. I get to lose.
If you are not thankful to Die Hard for anything else, be thankful that it introduced Alan Rickman to the world of cinema.
Hans Gruber was a character from the novel, and he bore no resemblance whatsoever to the Alan Rickman character.
We started casting and trying to make the movie work, and I'd been to New York and I'd seen this play, Les Liaisons Dangereuses, where Alan Rickman was in. He commanded the stage, and I remember I said to John, we should try to get this guy. This is a fantastic actor.
I'd never done a movie before, so this is my first film ever. I'd done some television in England, but to do a movie in Hollywood with a capital H, so, you really knew you were making a movie on that set, so it was like a great big adventure to me.
We had a great time building the character, because, it's just old-fashioned, charming bad guy stuff. It was the big fat guy in the white suit, Sidney Greenstreet, all those joyous old villains who knew they were a villain and took joy in it.
I loved working with John because, well, first of all, I had no other experience. He was the first American director I'd worked with, so I wasn't really quite sure what to expect. And I think fairly quickly it became clear that he wasn't quite sure what to expect either. I just instinctively would say things like, in the scene when I meet all of the people who are trapped in the office, and I said, oh, well, look, there's a buffet here. Why don't I eat a sandwich? There's some food, he's hungry. And he would just look at me and laugh and walk away. He was very generous and open and seemed to enjoy the collaboration.
He created the Eurotrash villain. Like, for the next 20 years in movies, whenever there was a bad guy, he was of uncertain descent. I'm not quite sure where I'm from, but it's not America.
There had to be a scene early on where you realized that as civilized and wonderful as this guy is and how great he is to listen to, he had to kill somebody.
It's terribly brutal, shockingly brutal, and it just went, whoa, uh-oh. Whoa, bad things can happen here, I better pay attention. And it was literally to say to the audience, wake up, you don't know what we're going to do to you.
The fun of the movie was inventing what they were really up to.
They look like terrorists. It just seems like they seem to have another agenda here.
You actually start to root for the villains because you want to learn more.
The costume issue was, that was again me not knowing anything about anything. And so I went in for fittings and they had all this terrorist gear lined up, all this padded stuff. And as you read the script, I never actually get my hands dirty. So just pushing that forward, I said, so if I didn't wear this stuff, maybe I could wear a suit. And if I was wearing a suit, then maybe there would be a possibility of meeting Bruce Willis and pretending to be one of the hostages.
It was driving us crazy. We're trying to contrive a way for them to meet, but the way the movie was structured, there was no way we could see that Bruce could meet him and survive the meeting. And then one day at lunch, people were just sitting around and someone said to Alan Rickman, Alan, do you do an American accent? A lot of your countrymen do an American accent. Do you do it? And he said, well, I don't really know if I do an American accent, but I do like, a California accent, And so everyone laughed, and I said, oh my God, that's it, stay right there.
The studio was absolutely horrified. This guy was the bad guy because he was like cowering and simpering and saying, oh, no, please don't kill me, don't kill me. And that was because he was a great actor, and that was what and they said, we have to replace him.
Certainly stories came to my ears that there were concerns in the early days of rushes. I think they kind of weren't sure what I was doing.
I remember we were just saying, no, we're not replacing him. Guys, you don't get it.
And he said, no, leave him alone. Something interesting going on here. That was a great acting opportunity because you've got a process in your head. Well, I'm German, and when I speak English, I speak it with a German accent.
And here he ends up to this day, one of the greatest villains of our time.
Most people just kind of phone it in and twist a mustache. He made Hans Gruber real to the point where you were almost just like, I like this guy. He's got class and style. He's an exceptional thief.
The thing is, again, out of ignorance, I come to a play or a movie knowing that the last thing you can ever do is to judge your character. So I'm just playing a person who wants certain things. Hans Gruber only really had one goal, that was money. There's a weird sort of mutual respect. I always thought that was key. It's very much ironic, detached statement traded for ironic, detached statement. So I think they're cut in a weird way from the same cloth.
He made you trust him. You didn't want him to die. And I can remember people telling me, that when he fell off that building, they fell with him.
Well, I know that I'm part of a cult movie, and it's a real reference point in modern movie history. I have only good memories of making that film. Every moment of it was exciting to be part of. It was a whole new adventure, and the whole thing is still very fresh in my mind.
Since Alan Rickman did such a great job in Die Hard 1, my goal was to make sure that we create something that is completely different.
That's one of the big expectations people have going into a Die Hard film is this villain's going to be great because the first villain was great. It's almost like if you were making sequels of Silence of the Lambs, but now we're going to have a new serial killer. It's not going to be Hannibal Lecter. What are the odds of coming up with another villain who's as good as Hannibal Lecter? So it's almost an impossible task.
He has all the traits of a hero. He's got courage, he's intelligent, he's committed, all the traits that you could want in an American hero, except he's playing for the wrong team.
And I came up with this idea right there. I said, I want you to be naked in the movie. And everybody in the room is like, what? And I'm like, I think a villain should be introduced naked.
Finding out you're going to be naked in the biggest blockbuster of the summer is very motivating. So I worked my ass off, literally. And I think for the audience, you have no idea what's about to happen, but it cannot be good. Whatever it is that this guy is up to, get out of his freaking way. You know, this is not going to end well.
We said, they've seen the first movie, so how can we change it up? We said, okay, we'll have domestic terrorists. You know, we've met the enemy, and they're us. So instead of formerly leftist terrorists from overseas, now we have right-wing terrorists from our domestic border. That'll be a big, big mind for the audience, and it certainly was. People were just stunned.
The thing about Die Hard 2 is there's a great sense of betrayal. These are Americans who've turned on you. These people should be your heroes.
At that time, the whole Noriega thing was going on, and whether he was an ally to the United States or not, and whether we thought he was a patriot, the fact that we'd arrested him. So I thought we had these super patriots who'd want to rescue him.
When I crash that plane, it ups the ante. All bets are off. The rules have all changed now. He will literally stop at nothing to achieve what he's set out to get. We're suddenly up in the red zone, and it doesn't come back down until the end of the film. The minute you start to believe that there is such a human who is capable of this stuff, then John McClane is in big trouble. It's like all of a sudden, all the rest of the possibilities in the story come to life. John Amos is a lovely guy. You want to like him. You'd follow him to the gates of hell if he were your commanding officer. He's like perfect for that role. And then he pulls a knife out and cuts that kid's throat. And you just go, oh my God, what just happened? That can't be John Amos that did that.
A lot of people are like, the guy from Good Times? The father from Good Times is the villain?
I'm such a nice guy. I've never been able to figure out why I play so many villains. Bastards.
I was attracted by the anarchic nature of Simon Gruber, a man who worked out his own way of finding wealth, and the brazenness of his plan. Everything about him I found deeply attractive.
I remember it like a lightning bolt. Just an idea. I had just rewatched the first movie, and I remember having this cockamamie idea, but I'm going to test this out. I need to call McTiernan immediately. John, how do you feel about connecting brothers as a matter of revenge and also to carry out a caper? And he responded very, very favorably. We knew we had a movie then.
And I met John McTiernan, and he said, well, you weren't the first person I thought of for this role. And I said, well, I'm sure I never am the first person, but do you think, you're the man for it? And I said, I do. I think it'd be a very good idea.
We decided to go with Jeremy Irons for the bad guy, which was not the usual character for him.
Well, I knew the character was supposed to be Alan Rickman's brother, and he was also an Englishman playing a German. I had an idea about how to try to make him seem like the same family as Alan.
Yeah, it's very good for that.
I wanted a sort of Aryanness to him, and I wanted to find a look that I hadn't used before. This was an opportunity, why not?
It was not that long after the destruction of the regime in Eastern Germany, and I just projected, okay, you got all these East German spies who used to be doing all this stuff, and suddenly somebody told them it's now a capitalist world, and we don't need you anymore, incidentally. And they just embraced the capitalism and said, okay, we're going to use our skills and go be capitalists. Whatever you're doing it in a cool way, all of you. It's working great.
Jeremy Irons is such a compelling villain, and he's just chewing the scenery. It's one of the first Jeremy Irons performances where he's just like, oh, I get paid to do this? Fine. And he just ate that scenery alive. It's fun to watch.
I love playing villains. I love playing people who make their own rules in life, and they are normally seen as villains.
As an English actor, they're... because they have so much technical skill, they can do just about anything. They make a director look good.
Now, there is this, I think, myth that English actors are good at doing that. If you look at the great roles in English theatre, for example, it's always the villains who are, I mean, Richard III, bit of a villain. Macbeth, bit of a villain. Coriolanus, bit of a villain in his own way. You know, you go through a lot of Shakespeare, and they are always more interesting to play than the good guys. I was very sad. He had just been with a very pretty girl who was one of his gang. I think, had he got away with it, he would have had a very pleasant future with her. When I travel in certain parts of the world, even though I suppose I've done around 70 movies in my career, people remember me from Die Hard. They say, it's Simon.
The movies that are most memorable, often a great villain is a key to it. And the part of you has to be like rooting for the villain because you're kind of charmed by him. A part of you kind of wants to see him win. Another part of you, of course, wants to see our hero. You want to see him be victorious. So you're a little torn between the two of them in some way, and you enjoy the battle between them.
Bruce had to work on the daytime on moonlighting, and he was exhausted at night, so Joel said to me, see if you can find more stuff for the other people to do so Bruce could get a break. So one of the reasons that the other characters got to be so rich is I was vamping by trying to, pad, really, the supporting players. The whole movie seemed more real.
I just feel like he needed to be somebody who immediately got that the guy inside was a cop. He didn't have the respect of his superiors for whatever reason, so that, when he would deliver information, it wasn't taken seriously. That's so frustrating for an audience because you're seeing what's happening.
He's his only voice of reason, his only voice of stability that he has.
The fact of a cop who's made a mistake, he's, doesn't want to do anything but sort of punch the clock and kind of get through things, and then you put him in a situation where he has to rise above as well.
And we'd made up that whole thing of he doesn't carry a gun, doesn't want to carry a gun. So I just asked for somebody who had understanding in his eyes, and Reggie had all that.
We don't see each other till the very end of the movie, and that was the first time I saw him. And it's interesting because I never saw him physically throughout the film, and I was always speaking to the script person. It was tough, to actually give a realistic performance playing against the script person. But I think it came through.
He brought a real humor to that role that was just fantastic. The Twinkie stuff was always in there. I think I was just hooked on Twinkies at the time and probably went that round. It was sort of a twist on donuts or something like that.
Al Powell was very crucial for the first movie. When we kept developing it, we agreed that Al Powell should definitely be there eating Twinkies, and we felt the audience would get a great kick out of seeing him.
I heard that people cheered when I came on screen. That was kind of nice.
My intent when I did the role wasn't trying or attempting to be funny. I was just doing the role, and just putting me in there. I wasn't trying to make people laugh.
One of the funniest moments in the movie is with Al Powell is driving his car. He's got an M60 destroying his hood. He's got a dead body on top of it. He flies through frame. All of a sudden, the body gets whipped off, and you realize Argyle's just having a fantastic time downstairs drinking with a stuffed bear.
The bear in the back seat, still around somewhere. Mamas and the papas.
Argyle, the limo driver, is a fun character to be like the one ally that John McClane has. You don't think that he's going to be able to sort of rise to the occasion at the beginning, but he helps out.
John McTiernan just said, punch the gas and just go. People were like, yeah, Argyle, you saved the day. And I'm like, oh, thanks, guys, thanks. Oh, yeah, it was cool.
I felt there was an opportunity to do something different than what people had normally seen me do. So we start shooting this stuff, and I'd never talked to John McTiernan, about this. And I was doing all this kind of amped up behavior, and he comes over after rehearsals and says, "What are you doing?" I said, well, I know we haven't really discussed this, but the character's, coked up, and we need to see that kind of arc over the course of the movie. He goes, no. Charming. Cary Grant's fine. Just lose all that other shit. I hate it. I went, I gotcha. To play this straight is not interesting to me. So I just kept at it, and he kept coming over and saying, what is it going to take to convince you this is not how to play this? And all of a sudden he went, hold on. And he looks over and he sees on playback, because we had shot the rehearsal, Joel Silver and Larry Gordon, the other producer, laughing at the monitor. And McTee goes, just do whatever you want to do. When we were doing that negotiating scene, I said, Joel, you know, because we're two old Jews, I said, Joel, Bubby or Boychik? He goes, what do you mean? I go, I got a commission. So I go, I can go Hans Boychik or Hans Bubby. He goes, now go with Bubby. Try Bubby.
I always like playing those kind of people. It's so much fun to play those kind of people. Because there are more people in the world than not that are like that. I have a good time with that. He was a guy on the hustle. He saw this is happening, so how does he get it out there and how does he do it?
He was great because you needed somehow to put the threat that the family was there. It's the wild card that the audience kind of loses track of, is that there's a photograph that puts this whole picture together.
The studio wanted us to cut the subplot of Bill Atherton's character, and why do we need that subplot? And we said, look, the whole thing ties together when Hans Gruber sees Bonnie looking at the TV and realizes that and then goes to her office and picks it up and sees the picture of the copy. So, I mean, it all comes together. But the studio said, you don't need that. And I said, but it won't make sense.
Dick Thornburg, I had to fight harder to have him in the movie. He was not originally part of the story, but I said, the audience loved hating him. And it's like, imagine if he shows up on the plane and he's like in the face of Bonnie Bedelia's character there again.
I had a great time playing that. I've never had a problem with looking stupid. I kind of love looking at the ways you can humanly look stupid to make people laugh.
Believe it or not, the Zeus Carver character in my spec script, he was a Eurasian grocer living in Harlem, John McTiernan. I remember him, the first time he asked me, he said, what do you think of Sam Jackson? And I said, I love Sam Jackson. I thought he was electric the first time I saw him. I thought it was a brilliant choice.
And action. Yo, hey, partner, wait up. Hey, I ain't your partner. I ain't your neighbor, your brother, or your friend. I'm your total stranger.
The nice thing about the third one is, you know, Sam Jackson gets pulled into the Die Hard universe as well, and Sam Jackson elevates anything he's in. So, man, that was fun.
It was an interesting thing the first day. Was talking to him and I had to say, he is the flake. You're the Republican. You're the man who's got his life screwed on tight. He's far more upright, far more disciplined than the hero white cop.
You know, the moment when McClane and Sam Jackson are driving at speed through New York City and you see Sam Jackson terrified, it's great.
Sam Jackson and Bruce played off each other really well, both within the comedy element of it and also the tension element of it.
The danger of adding Sam Jackson was always going to be like, well, then this is just going to become a buddy cop movie. And Die Hard was never meant to be that. But I think Die Hard's a strong enough concept that it's malleable, as we've seen. It can entertain notions of a buddy cop movie.
The fact that Bruce was not known for playing hard-hitting heroic roles worked it to our advantage because he looked to be seriously overmatched. He was just, you know, normal-sized guy. He wasn't, you know, bulging muscles and stuff like that.
A little bit of violence that seems more realistic will serve your story better than the sort of all-out nonsense. How do you make it have the brutality of seeming to be semi-real as opposed to Superman over-the-top brutality, which isn't real at all and isn't brutal at all? Because it's phony. And then at the same time, letting it grow as the movie went on, let the violence get bigger.
Every time I laid a fight out, I always involve the actors. Because an actor will give you more creativity for that particular character, rather than just get two stunt guys and say, okay, duck here, punch here, punch here. It's all Hollywood. I shoot what the character feels and what the story feels, you know? And Bruce was great. He'd come in. I said, Bruce, here's what we got. What do you think? Like when I did the fight in the Die Hard 1, he was ecstatic over that because he copied every word that I said. Everything I did, he did, except the one on the steps. That fight was one of the best fights I choreographed with. And Bruce did a lot of himself. It was good. I made him an action star.
You definitely want to see Bruce Willis have blood on him. It just seems like that. He gets bloodier and bloodier and bloodier in every one of them.
We had to define the cuts and the scrapes and the gashes early on because since we were all over the place. What page was that in? Well, what about my cheek? You don't have the cheek yet. Well, I don't have the cheek yet. No, your cheek doesn't come till 2 scenes later. No, my cheek is cut here and your cheek is not cut there. It's not cut there. It's cut here. Are you sure? Yes, we're sure. Now cut his cheek. I mean, don't cut his cheek.
He was sufficiently messed up, you know, and it got worse and worse. We had 17 of those T-shirts in various forms of degradation. As he would enter the ventilation system, it would have to get darker and darker. You know, the blood started coming and everything. Just the action itself was not for the audience to look at and not believe it. You got to really buy it.
People are always trying to make movies more realistic, finding what's realistic enough, what can we get away with, what is over the top for explosions and things like that.
It had to look real.
and that was hard to do in the photochemical era. So this is pre-digital. John McTiernan wants big and bold. When Bruce puts the TV on the chair and then plastic explosives and throws it down the elevator shaft, that was a forced perspective. So it was actually started this size and came down to a much smaller size. So we could actually shoot it. We shot an explosion coming up towards us. We had to mat Bruce over that. So we had to shoot him, and then he got out of the way. And the explosion was shot at hundreds of frames a second so that it looks big.
We had one very complicated day when we brought the helicopters down.
What we did was figure out how to shoot absolutely the minimum for 4 hours, and that's all they would give us.
We had to fly below roof levels of the building in Century City, and for those helicopters to fly and make those tight turns, we could do it once. So you have to set up 28 cameras for all those locations.
FAA was right there, and 10 o'clock's our deadline, and we want to do one more shot, and Joel is fighting on an FAA radio with the FAA, and it was all exciting.
Can't fly helicopters over the building there. So we basically shot scenes where Bruce would fire, up on the roof would fire, and the helicopter would be back there with Johnson, and Johnson with their sniper rifle trying to get a shot at him. And so basically we shot the scene without the helicopters there, and as though they were there, and then shot the helicopters separately and then composited that into the scene. Then there was the shot where Bruce is up there and you have him in the foreground, and then there's a focus change, and then the helicopter comes into focus behind him. That's a pretty tricky shot to do. We built the Fox Tower in our parking lot. So there's one shot where the helicopter comes over the edge of the building and explodes. And we built I think it was about 7-foot long helicopter out of a kit.
So I run out to the model shop, I buy a helicopter, bring it back. It gets about 2 feet off the ground and crashes and knocks the rotors off of it. We better teach ourselves how to fly this thing, because it's going to have to fly.
The guy that was piloting the helicopter was piloting it over the edge of the miniature, and we had one shot at it. So we had only one helicopter, and we had crossed fingers. The helicopter came over, and it hit the edge of the building, and it wasn't going to go over it. Thane Morris was the pyrotechnician, and he shoves it over the edge with a broomstick, and then it blows up. So Joel calls me the next day, and Joel is a very excitable guy. And he says, "Edlin, that shot is totally legitimate. Totally legitimate."
The business of the building blowing up, we did that very, very late. And I resisted it right to the very end. But Steve de Souza was saying, look, you got this big explosive. You can't have, it's the rule about the gun comes on stage in Act 1. It better go off by Act 3. And we had this thing of this giant explosive. You can't, what are you going to do? You got to blow up the explosive, right? Well, of course he was right.
It opened up the movie to this gigantic, big movie now, all of a sudden.
Then the other shot that was neat was when Alan Rickman falls 25 feet backwards into a big pillow. Stuntmen won't fall backwards. They want to see where they're going, But McTiernan talked Alan into doing the shot.
They said, look, this is the shot, and we can, of course, put it on the back of a stuntman's head and have him fall face down. And then they kind of shrugged and looked hopefully at me. And I looked at the script and I thought, no, I'm not going out face down. So I said, no, I'll do it.
And it was a little scary for him because you fall away and you cannot see where you're going. Even though there's a gigantic airbag below, it's still scary.
In order to fall backwards, I had to bring the gun up into the frame and then absolutely remember to spread eagle my arms and legs, because if I didn't, your body will turn and you're in danger of landing on your head. Which is probably why we shot that as my very last scene.
I said, look, I'm going to let you go on 3, 2, 1, go. So I told my guy that was releasing him, let him go on 1. So I got up there, I said, 3, 2, 1, and he went, and he got that expression on his face.
No acting was required for that shot.
And John shot it about 3 times, but I think he used that one because that was the best thing he got out of it. My son doubled him in the actual descend to fall, which was like 50, 60 stories up on the descending.
There was actually one shot that was the kind of killer, which was the end shot where the camera's on a boom. What we had to do is we had to make a matched move on a miniature to match the real building tilting down. The problem was that because Joel had kind of taken over the Fox Tower, the people in the building were getting real uptight about it. We asked everybody to turn the lights off, but a lot of the people said, screw you. And they left the lights on, which made the shot much more difficult because we had to put those lights in the windows in the miniature, and then they had to line up.
It was not easy. It was hard to make this all happen in the time we had, but we were happy with what we were getting, and we thought we had something special.
I knew that we were going to have a fun movie and a movie with some unusual action. And a prime example is the sequence we did with the military plane where he ends up taking the ejection seat out of there. And we were really wrestling with this sequence where we wanted him to get trapped in this plane and he's surrounded by the bad guys, but somehow he has to get out of there. And there were a million suggestions like, he goes out the back door and runs really fast. There's a sewer lid under the plane and somehow he gets into the sewer. He blows up the bad guys. And then I came up with this idea of the ejection seat. And I knew that cargo planes don't have ejection seats, but I felt like, how many people know that? I don't think people really care about that, but it became one of those kind of signature moments that I think audience really had fun with.
Airplane crashing. It was a great miniature explosion. I thought it was one of the best I've ever seen. I hadn't done much miniature work prior to that, and I thought miniature was miniature. When I saw it, the miniature was 30, 40 feet long, so it was pretty exciting seeing that whole thing they did.
The last shot of the movie is a giant matte painting, which means that we painted the airport and different airplanes there, and then created pockets of action, just groups of people that we shot from certain angles and placed them into this matte painting optically, because the digital world wasn't invented. And so it's done exactly how movies were done in the 30s. And in this very sort of old-fashioned way, we were able to sort of create this very big end shot, which of course in today's world would be done completely differently.
Very often it was a case of pay attention to what you see. We had this terrible problem of having a long tunnel underground.
I think the most difficult part of the film was maybe shooting the tunnel, where we couldn't figure out how do you build a set that's 1.5 miles long, and how do you get the water to do what we're supposed to do.
And we flew all over the place. We went practically halfway to the North Pole to see this enormous tunnel that was part of Hydro-Quebec. And then I happened to sit and think, well, what do I see if I'm in a tunnel? I see where the lights are. I see 4 or 5 feet from the lights. Otherwise, I don't see a damn thing.
We had huge tubes, and then when we decided to shoot it all at night, so we'd have a tube, and then there'd be nothing with just blackness, and then another tube, and that's how we got hundreds and hundreds of yards. It was just a series of small tubes. It was really clever.
Every 20 yards or so, there was a piece of tunnel, and with the light, we made it look like a long tunnel. And then the special effects with the water was just inserted.
Probably the most challenging thing that we had to do is the dump truck with the water pushing it through and everything like that, and figuring out how to photograph that and composite all together with the shots that we'd done.
For us, Die Hard was a classic marriage of old-time miniature waterwork with new digital compositing, particle systems, and things like that.
We shot the piece with Bruce actually in a tube with water forcing him up. It was interesting, because the number of pumps and hoses they had running to make the effect work on it. And I've always tried to do effects that people don't see effects there. There is a probability that somebody might actually be able to do that. And that makes it have the ability to be much more real.
I thought the visual scope of the movie was just off the charts. I thought Menzies' photography was just brilliant.
The shot, I'm sure he would say the same, that was the most difficult.
That sandwich board beginning, where the cop is forced to wear this sandwich board in Harlem with this appalling racial epithet. It's meant to be appalling. That's the whole point of it. That was specifically set in Harlem.
Of course, we didn't want him to wear anything that would offend the community where we were shooting, so he wore boards that had cross marks on them, and we put the lettering on in post.
That showed where we had come at that point in terms of tracking technology, because it's flawless. You don't even notice it.
When you go back and you watch the first film, it's such a classic in the way that you can't get enough of it, and you just want to watch that film over and over again. You want to see more films with this character.
The first Die Hard made action movies smarter. Before that, they were sort of, not all of them, but they were kind of mindless.
Serious intellectual filmmakers love this film because it is perfectly constructed.
My estimation of Die Hard is way up there in world cinema history, the first film. I really do think that it's one of the best movies ever made. As a sort of a hard-boiled, tough, visceral action-adventure film, it simply is the gold standard. You can't get better than that.
Anybody that says that they know are full of shit, because you don't know. You hope. But that one, we're going through it, and piece by piece, we did the best we could, and everybody was on their game.
This was a peak experience in
all our careers.
It was just one of those magical compilations of aspects that all clicked.
Die Hard was one of those films that comes along once in a lifetime.
It was written in desperation by a writer who needed to make a hit. Bruce needed to come out of the television world, and this is not necessarily what people want to hear sometimes, but the right mix of motivation makes a movie very, very successful because people want it to work.
Once in a while you have those groups that come together and it really works, and other times it doesn't. But in this case, it definitely worked.
It's gonna end up right here, Yanni.
In an age where lots of movies are kind of constructs, you've got to get a bit of this and a bit of that, and then we get a rewrite of this, and then we market it this way, and then we predict it in the computer that way. I don't think any of that was true with Die Hard. I think people just honestly were having their craft tested. That's an honorable thing to do in a movie.
I think that, the planets aligned for this movie. So much of the success was how McTiernan kind of orchestrated all this.
Okay, take him up.
There was a sense for most of us that had wanted to make other, perhaps more sophisticated movies in one way or another, but we weren't going to sneer at these movies. We were going to really do the best job we could and make them good movies.
I just assume every family watches Die Hard every Christmas Eve. It's a usual thing in my house. When we want a Christmas movie, the best movie in the world isn't, a regular Christmas movie, it's Die Hard for us.
Die Hard worked really well. People really enjoyed it and loved it, so it had a kind of cachet. So as long as you're going to make a movie that takes place in a confined space, they Die Hard in a blank, they say that.
It's Die Hard and that's become a joke in Hollywood. Die Hard on a boat. Die Hard in an aquarium. Die Hard's in space.
Die Hard on a train.
Die Hard on an island.
There's Die Hard in a plane in the air.
Die Hard on Air Force One.
Die Hard in the White House. They're making Die Hard in the White House now.
6 years ago, I get a call from a producer that says, you should do what you write. And I've got the script. It's right up your alley. It's a big action movie. Fix the script and you can direct it. I'll say, okay, what is it? He said, it's Die Hard in a building.
Did it change the history of American action films? You bet it did.
Action!
I just try to make a movie that I'd like to go see. You take the toolkit you have and the circumstance you have and do the best you can.
Action!